Welcome back. In the second segment of the show, we're going to be discussing how Egypt plans to cope with the current global economic crisis resulting from the coronavirus pandemic as well as the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Joining us over the phone is Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, the former assistant to the foreign minister. Good afternoon to you, Mr. Ambassador.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining us. To what extent, Mr. Ambassador, is the global economic crisis going to affect or affecting currently the Egyptian economy?
It is a serious crisis, whether the economic results of the coronavirus or the impact of the war between Russia and Ukraine.
Yes.
Both of them are severely hitting the international economy. Even big economies like Britain or Germany, China, all of them this year will come with a diminishing economy. Egypt, among very few countries, will continue growing positively. Not to the extent we aim, but at least we are growing positively. That's why we always keep saying that we have to double our efforts in order to continue growing. Why? Because we are a very young country which produces 2.5 million children annually. We grow by more than 25 million newcomers since the revolution of 2011. This is the double size of a country like Greece.
Yes.
This is a big burden with the other challenges. That's why we have to keep growing and to explore new areas where to expand, whether it's agriculture, it is services, it is industry, name it. And thank God why Egypt will continue growing positively.
Yes.
Because really we were, thank God that we expect from the beginning that we need what we call a serious program for economic reform. So we started this in November 2016, 3 years before the first hit of the corona epidemic. So when the problem came, we were already standing on strong feet.
Yes.
Same thing with the international crisis coming as a result of the war in Ukraine.
Yes, but we still feel the economic crunch itself, where inflation has increased quite a bit here in Egypt. The average Egyptian is finding the prices of goods generally quite expensive, specifically, staple goods like related to wheats and grains because of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. How can the government somehow handle this situation and try to tackle the inflation?
This is another dimension of the problem. It's not only that we are lack of cereal and food, and we are trying to solve this problem also, but now we have inflation. What is the meaning of inflation? It is a big quantity of money running after a smaller quantity of commodities.
Yes.
So in order to fight against inflation, you have to do either things or both of them. You continue producing much more commodities and reducing a little bit the flow of money in the market because it encourages the inflation. And that's what exactly our central bank is doing now by raising the rate of interest. So they attracted billions of dollars in order to invest instead of going and compete each other to buy more and more commodities.
Yes. But the fear worldwide is of actually stagflation, not inflation itself. Is this something that Egypt could also possibly face, stagnation and inflation at the same time?
I think not, because still we are running to produce more, and we are encouraging new investors to come to our country, and we are one of the most attractive countries in Africa
Yes.
and in the Arab world for new investments. But I am greedy. I am hopeful, hopefully that more and more investors will come. And we want to encourage them to come by
Yes.
making their life easier, by making less bureaucracy, good banking system,
Yes.
not wasting his time, the investor. That's why I think we shall continue at this direction. This will bridge the gap.
Yes. Do you expect that the Ukraine-Russia conflict to last long, or is it something short-term? And if it does last longer than expected, what does this mean for the economy?
This is a disastrous situation. You cannot predict when it will stop.
Yes.
Because it is a matter of race between the West, the NATO,
Yes.
and the Russian new state.
Yes.
And the West did manage this problem 10 years ago much better than now, when they attracted Russia to be one member of the international economic community,
Yes.
adding them to the groups of G7. That was 10, 15 years ago. Now, they are doing the opposite. They are punishing Russia by encouraging Ukraine to be a member in the NATO and a member in the EU. And this is too close to the national security of Russia.
Yes.
And Russia now of President Putin is not Russia of Khrushchev or Yeltsin, Gorbachev or Yeltsin. So both sides at this moment, I don't see any sort of step down and come to reason.
Yes.
So we shall see this sort of game for some time until they discover that they cannot continue like that.
Okay, the Egyptian Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli spoke about 5 main pillars to cope with the current financial crisis that resulted from the pandemic and then, moving on to the Ukraine-Russia conflict. How do you see the action plan set out by the government?
I was so happy and glad watching the Prime Minister and his colleagues talking to us, especially Halis Saeed, Ahmed Kujuk.
Yes.
They talk to us reason. So as a citizen, mind you that I have a little bit of experience, I was satisfied they are talking to us in a language which the layman can understand. I hope that this will be repeated, this sort of dialogue, because it brings people behind the government.
Yes.
And I want to tell our audience that there isn't one very good or excellent solution. No, the good solution is a solution which convinces the people, and this is for their sake. The medicine is not enough by itself, but the patient must have confidence in the medicine he is getting. That's what Prime Minister was doing a couple of days ago by telling us that his medicine is quite this and that we are confident that we are in a position to know exactly what is the problem and that we are going to tackle it and solve it, inshallah.
Yes. The Prime Minister also spoke about listing certain country assets or public sector assets for the private sector to buy into. How important is this, and how can this help the economic crisis or slow down, the process of inflation and all of that?
This is very important, and I hope that we continue this dialogue, because really there is a big discussion between the whole country, which sort of economy we want to lead, state-led economy or market-oriented economy or something in between. This must be quite discussed with the leadership of the Prime Minister and the concerned ministers to prove to all the people that we are not selling our property, we are not selling the government's property. we are inviting more and more investors in order to make our property and our wealth much more.
Yes.
This discussion will lead us at the end, inshallah, to a sort of national consensus in order to support whatever we agree upon, all of us.
Yeah. How can the government, like you were saying, we're still trying to figure out whether we want to be a completely free market situation, or do we want state bodies as well to be somehow involved within the market itself? How can the government implement this plan while still maintaining social protection programs for, the low-income brackets?
It is something like making a good meal. If you like sugar, okay, but don't put too much sugar or too much salt. It is a matter to be in the middle, to taste it and to get the good taste for what you are cooking. So a national dialogue is very important here until we reach the point what will be managed by you and me and the private sector, what will be left to the government. We are not talking about the railway transport, we are not talking about the ports or something like that. We are talking about somebody to come and to help us in the management here or there. But we are not selling Egypt at all, and the Sphinx and the pyramids will stay there. Suez Canal will stay there. Railways will stay there. But we are encouraging the private sector to come in new areas in order to help us all in order to increase our income.
Concerning the budget in Egypt, it intends to lower the total debt, which is currently at 86%, down to 75% of gross domestic product for the next 4 years, and decreasing the budget deficit from 6.2% to 5%. How can the government achieve this within, given the financial crisis worldwide, and given, that the many factors within Egypt itself that may hinder these efforts?
This is a very important subject also, and the president himself asked the government to tell us exactly where we are. And he asked them to make this indebting problem better than it is now. That, of course, there isn't one single government which is not borrowing, but the ratio must be controlled. And the issue is not that we are borrowing, the ratio between the volume of our debts to our GDP. And yesterday, the Vice Minister of Finance told us that it is going down and down. We should continue like that. And also, the governor of the central bank told us whatever the debt is, thank God that since the 90s we never stopped paying our debts or paying what we should pay to our indebtedness.
Okay, Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, the former assistant to the foreign minister, thank you so much for shedding light on how the government plans to cope with the global financial crisis. This brings us to the end of this episode of Cairo Local Time, and stay tuned for more on Nile TV.